On today's episode, I want to share a new report that came out from Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer on Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns, because for a while there, it was looking like Shedeur would be the pick at number 2, at least going into the combine and coming out of it. Then we transitioned like in the Browns pre-draft life cycle from Shedeur Sanders to Abdul Carter to Travis Hunter. And right now we're all over Travis Hunter. But let's not forget about the first love the Browns had reportedly in the pre-draft process, Shedeur. Now here's what Albert Breer recently wrote. I don't think Sanders is going in the top 3. And at this point, it feels like it'd be surprising if the Las Vegas Raiders, New York Jets, or Saints took him in the top 10. I've had more than one person say to me, if Shedeur goes in the first round, it'll be because an owner got involved. Let's break this down because there are some really good, juicy nuggets coming out of that quote right there. One, this has kind of been the thing I've been preaching for the last 6-7 weeks, that it felt more likely Shedeur would go closer to pick 32 than pick number 1. And I think people, as we get closer to the draft, are starting to come to reality, which is he was never really perceived as an incredible first-round talent. It's just the quarterback in a bad quarterback class with a really good pedigree being Deion Sanders' son. And you put that all together and you get the perfect storm of quarterback-needy teams in a bad quarterback class are going to give Shedeur Sanders the benefit of the doubt. And as we get closer to the draft, I don't think there's really many GMs out there that feel in their core that is someone I think is worth a top 10 draft pick. So Shedeur's stock dropping, that's not a surprise to me. And if you watch the channel, it really shouldn't be any new information to you. Now, the one part of it that I do want to extrapolate on for a moment is the owner meddling part. Because if you know Jimmy Haslam, you know this is something that's up his alley. He once let a homeless man tell him to take Johnny Manziel in the first round. So that was a decade ago. I think that Haslam has grown as an owner and is much more hands-off than he was at the start of his time with the Browns. However, with the new stadium in the mix here, he needs to get butts in seats. He needs to sell jerseys. He needs to turn a profit because he's putting over $1 billion of his own money into this new stadium. And he needs fans to get season tickets for that new stadium. And there's nothing that sells more instantly than a quarterback. Long-term success, not necessarily. But if you want to have an immediate, jersey-selling, name-popping selection, it's a quarterback. And that's not up for debate. So that could be where Jimmy Haslam meddles a little bit. I don't think that meddling will come at pick number 2. But maybe later on. But that's kind of my overarching just belief and thought here. And I wanted you guys to leave today's video with at least this one thought. If you don't like Shedeur Sanders at pick number 2, do you like him enough to trade back into round 1 for him? I don't think that's a good philosophy to have. Hey, we don't like him enough to use the second overall pick, but we do like him enough to give up future draft capital to get him back in round 1, but we don't like him enough to not risk the possibility of him falling to us in the later stages of round 1. That to me is way too convoluted. If you like him, go draft him. If you don't like him, then don't give up draft capital to go get him in round number 1. It's too valuable of a position to go, let's wait and see. You want to wait and see if a wide receiver could fall to you. You don't wait and see if he slips past the Saints at number 9 and the Steelers at 21 and you go get him at 25 or 26. No. If he's your guy, then go get him at pick number 2. If he's not your guy and you're comfortable with letting him slip past pick number 2, then don't give up future draft capital and valuable assets to get him later on in round 1. That to me is the just general consent, or not general consensus. That to me is the theory and the thesis I'm working with when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks and specifically Shedeur Sanders in this case. If he's your guy, then don't mess around with it. Sure, it may not be a super popular opinion in the moment, but there were a lot of picks that weren't popular in the moment and they aged just fine. but I don't like the idea of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We like him enough to trade back into round 1, but we don't like him enough to get him at number 2. But we're comfortable with letting him potentially get picked by a different team. So we're just going to wait and see if he falls a little bit. So there's my 50, 67, 80 cents on the whole subject. Some background on Shedeur, though, as a player in general. 6'1", 212 pounds. The crazy thing about Shedeur is he's Deion Sanders' son, but what's like one of the biggest cons that come up about him? He's not athletic enough. How the hell does Deion Sanders produce a son that's biggest knock going into his NFL draft day is the guy's not athletic enough? That to me is just mind-boggling. But it is true because he doesn't have the greatest like maneuverability. Is that even a word? Maneuverability? Yeah. And pocket skills to bail out. And what I mean by that is he takes a lot of sacks, which you can blame a lot of that on the offensive line. But when pressure comes to him, he tends to retreat. And in college football, you can kind of get away with that because you might be able to run around a defensive end. But in the NFL, if you're not fast enough to retreat and get around a defensive end, like, say, Lamar Jackson, then you're going to end up taking a 15-yard sack instead of an 8-yard sack. And that is the difference between second and bad versus second and this drive is over. And there's no coming back from it. So, would you trade up for Shedeur Sanders? Personally, I'm not that interested. Unless you can find a way to trade up and not give up a whole lot for him, and you just go from like 33 to 32, and you give up a 5th or 6th round draft pick just to get the 5th-year option on him, cool. Going from 33 to like 20, 22, 23, and giving up potentially 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round draft picks? Now, I think that's too big of an investment for a player that you didn't like enough at number 2, and you were willing to risk not even having him there at 22. Now, if you don't trade up for Shedeur Sanders, the name that I would toss out there as a real contender for the Browns to land on is Jackson Dart, because he appears to be really coming into focus for the Browns, and I want to spend more time on Jackson Dart as we get closer to the NFL draft. Now, before we do a deeper dive on the Ole Miss quarterback, I do want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at GameTime. GameTime makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. If you want to go watch the Cavs or you want to go to a Guardians game or any other sporting event in your area, make sure to visit GameTime first because they've got awesome deals for the dog pound. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHAT Sports for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's talk about Jackson Dart, the USC transfer to Ole Miss quarterback who had a really great career at Oxford. I mean, he holds a bunch of records for the Rebels. Total wins, I thought that would go to like Eli Manning. No, he broke all those records at Ole Miss. But I'm bringing up Dart because I think he actually fits a little bit better for what Kevin Stefanski's offense would call for. Not that Shedeur doesn't fit it, but the thing that I read in Albert Breer's article that really jumped out to me is, well, Jackson Dart, I'm not going to pass him off as this great, perfect prospect. I've got my fair share of concerns with him, but something that jumps out to me about Dart that I think could really resonate well with Cleveland is that the tools and the skill set that he showcased could be very transferable to the NFL. Let me give you a specific example. Dart, when pressure arrived at Ole Miss, would climb up in the pocket. Shedeur took 99 sacks, in part because of the offensive line, and 99 sacks over 2 years, in part because of the offensive line, but also in part because when shit at the fan, Shedeur bailed out of the pocket. And in college, you could be able to, use your speed to run around and evade defenders. In the NFL, Shedeur Sanders is not evading guys like Myles Garrett. However, Dart, I think, showed NFL scouts a willingness to stick in the pocket a little bit more and step up and not take those big losses, those huge negative plays. And so when you look at the big cons for Jackson Dart, I mean, we're talking about someone who's got some decision-making problems. That Florida game was just crippling, and I can't seem to get past it, and that's why I'm not beating the Jackson Dart drum, because he threw 2 interceptions, back-to-back plays, with a playoff spot in the balance. And you want quarterbacks who, shine the brightest when the lights are on. And Dart didn't show me that when that was the situation last year for Ole Miss. At home against Kentucky, a loss. And then at home, right, or on the road, on the road against Florida, a bad Florida team. So those are things that have to be cleaned up. But if those are the things that have to be cleaned up, that seems like something a coaching staff is willing to bet on in round 2 or 3 of the draft, which is where I think the Browns could find Dart. I don't think the Browns are going to be as aggressive to find a quarterback in round 1 as some people will like to think they will be, just given the need they have at quarterback. If they do, I don't think it's going to be this blockbuster trade-up. I think this could be a rough idea for what the Browns would be comfortable doing in order to move back into round 1, not to necessarily get the player of their choice, but to get the 5th-year option on that quarterback. So what about making a deal with the Buffalo Bills? Go from 33 up to 30, and you give Buffalo a future 4th-round draft pick. This to me is not, hey, we want to make sure no one else gets Jackson Dart. This is, hey, we want to make sure we get Jackson Dart in the 5th-year option. It could even be going from 33 to 32. The Carolina Panthers did that last year to get Xavier Legette. So my working kind of theory and prediction is you start Joe Flacco until you can't, until the wheels really fall off on your 40-year-old quarterback, and then Jackson Dart gets a swing at it. I don't think he is ready to start week 1. I think he has to learn a lot about reading defenses and getting to the line of scrimmage and post-snap decision-making and probably some pre-snap decision-making as well, given the offense he played in at Ole Miss was heavy RPO. And so we're not talking about reading a lot of, DBs when it comes to going through your progressions, but just reading defensive ends and deciding what you want to do. And I think that stuff just comes with time. And so give him the opportunity to sit and learn behind Pickett and Flacco, 2 guys who have been in the league for a good amount of time now. Flacco more so than Pickett. And if Flacco shows you he just can't play anymore at his age, then you give Jackson Dart an opportunity for the last couple of weeks of the year, like Michael Penix did with the Falcons. Before we sign off, if you are not subscribed to the channel yet, make sure you go ahead and do so. And if you are already subscribed, I'd love to hear when you join the channel. So scroll on down, give me a date if you've been subscribed for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And if you're not, make sure to click that sub button before Thursday night. Now let's pick a card to get you guys on your way. Which card do you want to go with, Mr. Reed? Reed says 9 of clubs. I'm going to go with 5 of clubs. Back-to-back. 4 of spades. Damn. Thank you guys for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see everyone later.